Okay, perfect. Thanks everyone for joining here. We were just waiting a little bit for some folk to trickle in, but let's get started. My name's Andrew. I'm on the boot camp team with Leland, and we obviously are wrapping up dental week right now and have this Q&A, but we are launching a dental school boot camp in about a month, and someone on this call today is going to win a free spot. And so if you want to win a free spot in the boot camp, scan that QR code below or type in bit.ly/dental app bootcamp in your browser. And right now I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the boot camp. It's kind of obviously kind of the next level of what this Q&A would be. But yeah, if you want to hit the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit more about the boot camp. So um, it'll be hosted in about a month from now. And obviously, this dental week is meant to, give some free value and help you. But the boot camp will go a little bit more in depth. And once again, one person on today's call will win free admission, but then everyone else will have the opportunity to get a discount to join. And I'll get into that shortly. So if you want to go to the next slide as well, you'll see that obviously this week we've hosted some live sessions. The dental school boot camp will have other live sessions as well. These free sessions have been more to kind of get you excited and prepare for applications, whereas this boot camp will actually help you do your application. It will go through all the specific steps about, your personal statement, writing your essays, and, prepping for your interviews. And not only will we have these live sessions, but there's going to be more content as well, combining all of Leland's fantastic products and services. If you want to go the next slide as well, you'll see that we have not only the live expert instruction, but we'll have some peer-to-peer feedback experiences where you'll be able to interact with coaches and other people in the bootcamp cohort. There's going to be some interactive activities, of course, pre-work and resources that you can use. In addition to that, you'll actually be able to also have a mock interview with one of our top coaches. That alone is, normally like hundreds of dollars depending on the coach you select. And then we'll give you some, discounts to other coaches, access to Leland Plus, which is our content library filled with a bunch of free resources, Q&A, and you'll be able to network with other applicants. As you'll see here, the total value of something like this would normally be, $2,000 more or less. And if you click next, you'll see here that we're actually going to do it for $600 for everyone who's on this call today. And it ends tonight at midnight. So if you go to that link that I sent you and apply, we will obviously have one person on this call be the lucky free winner, but then everyone else on the call will be able to get it for a discounted rate of $600. And after the call is done, if you weren't the winner of the giveaway, we'll be sending you a text, and then it'll be me directly that you can communicate with via text back and forth if you have any questions between now and when the application closes at midnight. So hope that everyone applies. But from there, I'll turn the time over back to, the person you actually want to hear from on this call. Oh yeah, and sorry, there was that. So we're good. My bad.
Okay. Hang on a second. I'm just gonna minimize things so I can actually see my screen. Um, okay. All right. Hi, my name is Nivetha. I'm currently a second-year dental student at the Harvard School of Dental Medicine. I took a gap year. I used um, to go to school in Maryland. I took a gap year where I worked as a dental assistant for a full year at a pediatric dental office before coming up to Boston and starting dental school here at the Harvard School of Dental Medicine. So it's pretty unstructured in the sense that you guys just ask me whatever questions and I'm here to answer them. So if you have any questions, please just put them in the chat and then I'll go through and answer um, whatever questions I can with the time that we have. Um, okay. Okay, I'm going to answer Grace's questions. What activities and traits do competitive schools like Harvard want to see in applicants? So I think for each school, it sort of depends on what their mission statement is. Um, so different schools will emphasize different things. So for example, another institution might emphasize service or a like a very service-oriented background in their students, or some other schools, such as Harvard, might emphasize having a lot of research in your background, which I think Harvard does tend to come off as a research school. I personally actually didn't do any research, and a lot of my other classmates did not as well before we got in here. So I think a big part of it is just having a lot of like diverse experiences, but then also having experiences that, are longitudinal or things that you can when you come to like an interview or when you're writing about it in your application, you can like very clearly show that you care a lot about those types of experiences. And I'm talking about like outside of also just like having, a good GPA and getting a good score on the DAT and having strong letters of recommendation. Um, let's see. Some of these questions I think I might have a harder time answering. So And I think a lot of the questions that are like very specific in terms of like GPA and like certain graduation or application requirements, I always suggest just reaching out to the admissions people because they'll give you a much more accurate answer. And a lot of these types of things depend on what school exactly that you're applying to and are going to see all these things. Okay, so somebody said I graduated in 2024 and a lot of my prerequisites are going to be over 5 years old by the time I apply. Will most schools want me to retake all of those requisites again? Okay, yeah, again, similar. I think a couple of other people have that same question. Just reach out to the actual admissions offices because I think it also depends on schools. Um, how did you prepare for your application cycle and how did I get in? So preparing for my application cycle, so taking the DAT is like one of those first steps. I applied during 2022 and I took the DAT the year before. I studied for like the entire summer and that was like my main focus. I did shadow on the side like once or twice a week so that I wasn't like sitting at home all the time. And that was also just to like help build up my experiences and add more things to my resume. Um, and so took the DAT and then when it came to the actual start of the application cycle itself, I think in like January of the year that I was going to apply, I started thinking about letters of recommendation and I asked professors like in March, so a couple months before the application cycle even opened, so that they would have adequate time because I think a lot of the professors that I wanted to write my letters of recommendation were also writing for a lot of other people. Um, and then when it came to the actual application cycle, I tried to gather all of my documents and like basically just like look into what I needed before the application cycle even opened because for me, I wanted to have everything ready and submitted like as soon as possible. I just didn't want like the stress on me of like having to keep going through the process of getting everything done. So a lot of it was me doing research in terms of like what are schools looking for, coming up with that list of schools that I wanted to apply to, having my personal statement ready before the application cycle even opened. That was like a whole process of me writing multiple drafts, getting it edited by a lot of different people. I reached out to like dentists that I'd shadowed. I reached out to like my undergrad institution. They had like a professional office. And so like for people applying to grad school or people applying to jobs, they did a lot of these services for free where I could send them my resume and they would edit it. I also went to them for mock interviews when it came time for me to start attending interviews, and it was a really great experience. Went to them even for my resume. So relied very heavily on a lot of those like free services through my school to help, um, I guess, structure a lot of the application materials that I needed. So a lot of the preparation was me just like thinking about what do I need when it comes to actually applying and then having all of those items ready if possible before the actual application cycle began. Um, things about getting into Harvard, I think it's always kind of funny because um, and also just speaking for a lot of my classmates too, I think a lot of us didn't really expect to be here. Um, so I wasn't like applying with the aim of getting here. I just wanted to get into dental school, and I was very lucky and very blessed to have the opportunity to come here. But I will say some of the factors that certainly helped, I think, were having a lot of undergrad volunteer experiences. So, for example, something that I did all 4 years in undergrad was volunteering to file taxes. So, this had nothing to do with dentistry, but it was something that I was very passionate about, very committed. And as I continued the volunteer experience, I moved up in terms of leadership, and I think that really helped. And also just having like a strong academic background in terms of like a good GPA, good letters of recommendation, showing that I had diverse interests, and then a good DAT score. So talking a little bit more about some of my extracurriculars when I applied. So I talked about like leading the tech site. So that was something that I started my freshman year. So I majored in economics and biology. And so um, I was really happy that, I had this experience of something that isn't going to be directly related to my future career, but also something that I was very passionate about. So I started off as just like a basic volunteer filing taxes for other people. And then over the years, I stepped up into more leadership roles until my fourth year, where I was actually like leading the site. Some other stuff that I did, I was a peer mentor in a couple of different places in college. And so one of it was like for people that were doing service, I was a peer mentor. I tutored for a couple of places and I was a TA. So I had a lot of different extracurricular experiences, but they were all, I want to emphasize, they were all things that I really enjoyed. And I was very happy to be doing all of them. And I think when it came to time for me to like writing about them in my application and when I was asked about them during interviews, I think it really showed when I was able to talk about them. And also, I think some of those experiences were also very unique. You don't really get a lot of people that filed taxes that applied to dental school. And I think that also sort of helps you stand out. If you have something that's unique, then I think it's important to bring those things up and talk about it. Do you think problem-based learning style is a good way to learn in didactics? That's a great question. I think a lot of schools have started adopting the problem-based learning style, and I think it's fantastic. I will say, so the Harvard dental school curriculum, our first year and a half is integrated with the medical school, and the medical school classes are all problem-based learning. Whereas once you transition fully into the dental school during the second year, then it's a mix of problem-based learning and lecture. And so it's kind of interesting because now I've had experience in both, and I've actually enjoyed both. I think a lot of the benefits of problem-based learning is like, you actually have to like understand and learn to apply the information. Whereas if you're like just going to lectures, it tends to be more memorization based. And so something that I really liked about the problem based learning was that like if you can memorize it, that's fine, whatever, but you need to actually be able to understand and have a grasp on the information. And I think that's really great for retention. And I thought that was really nice. And I enjoyed sort of like the more problem solving approach. It's also nice because you're actually collaborating with your classmates. When you're in lecture, you know, you can't really talk to anybody else and you're sitting there and you're paying attention to the lecture. Whereas with the problem-based learning, a lot of it is like you're actually getting to know your classmates, you're building like study groups, connections, and I mean, I think like networking is also a really important part of being in school. And so I think problem-based learning is fantastic for that. How did I get the dental assisting position and did I get a dental assisting certificate? So I think, yeah, I'm not sure about the requirements in different states. I was an assistant in Maryland. I did not take a dental assisting course and get a certificate. I actually, so the kind of crazy part of my application um, experience was that I decided that I wanted to do dental school over COVID. And that was kind of like the worst time to make that decision because nobody was letting you shadow. And so I was like, okay, this is something that I think I'm really interested in, but then I have no idea how I'm even supposed to explore it because, you know, nobody's accepting shadowing for good reasons. And so I was like, not really sure what to do. But then once the vaccine came out and slowly like there were people were sort of starting to go out in public a lot more. I started going to offices and giving them my resume in person, which was like the most stressful experience ever. Also very humbling. But as I did that, there was one office, the office that I ended up working at, that she contacted me later and she told me, oh, like I don't really let people shadow, but if you want to work here, I am looking for dental assisting positions. So I was like, yes, I'm totally interested in working here. So it was me looking for shadowing that ended up getting me that job. But I do think that like for other people that I know of, one way to get some of these positions is like being in like if you're an undergrad institution or like if you're not an undergrad currently, but if you could get connected to like some other group maybe near you of pre-dental students, a lot of the times they'll have these group chats of like people offering these opportunities because like a lot of students that are working at a dental assisting office, if they have like an open position, they'll send a message like, oh, this office is hiring, like reach out to so and so. And so I think like being plugged into some of those networks is a fantastic way. So like for example, at my undergrad, when I was leaving, I put in our pre-dental group chat, hey, like it was like basically like our club group chat. And I was like, hey, there's an open position, like reach out to me. And so that was also how my boss figured out who was going to take my position once I left for dental school. Um, let's see. Did you use a application coaching guide? I didn't actually end up using because I didn't know that this was like a resource out there, to be honest, when I applied. Um, but I probably would have used it because I think it's helpful when you can talk to somebody that actually knows how the dental application process works and has a lot of experience. But I personally did not. But looking back, I it would have been like a lot more reassuring and a lot less stressful. How did you know what schools you wanted to apply for? Yeah, so I think I basically made a list of like, well, I think a DO like on the application itself, it'll list like every single school. And so a couple of things that I knew for myself at least, I wanted to stay on the East Coast. I didn't want to go to the West Coast or anywhere that was like super far from home. Um, I knew that I wanted to go to a school that really valued community service and was also from an area where like you have a lot of diverse communities. So that sort of helped rule out like a lot of schools. I didn't really want to go anywhere that was rural. Um, and let me think a couple of other things. I think also just like as I went onto the websites, I think it also just helped me like learning about like what the class culture is. I mean, like on every single dental school website, they'll list like their core values and what their mission statement is. And I think looking at a lot of those, I could sort of figure out what resonated with me and what didn't. In addition, I also did look at like what are some of the clubs, what are some of the like student projects that are going on, and trying to see if there's things that like I felt like I would want to be engaged in were I to go to that institution. What advice do you have for the personal statement? Should it illustrate a story on why dentistry and any tips? Yes, it should definitely illustrate a story on why dentistry. Um, so I think from what I also like experienced when I was applying and what I've seen from a lot of other people as well is that it is really helpful to write it in like a story format. Um, so I can talk a little bit about my personal statement just because I think that's like just where I gauged myself. And so I wrote like a personal story about myself that wasn't related to dentistry, but then I spent maybe like a couple of sentences talking about that, and then I quickly tied it into dentistry. And so I didn't make it very obvious that like it was going to be like fully about dentistry, like in the very beginning. But then because I wanted something else to sort of draw the reader in, and so I would write about something a little bit unrelated, but then quickly connect it to dentistry and then talk about some of the other elements of my life and my experiences and how they all came together to encapsulate why I wanted to go into dental school. I think something that's important is like you write about something that you really care about because you're gonna like, I personally hate writing. And so I know that like writing a personal statement about something that I'm not really passionate about was going to be really tough. And so I had to go through a couple of different sort of drafts and I had a couple of different versions that were like very different from each other. But I think like once I wrote them and, you know, went back and reread them, I was like, okay, this approach is much better. I can clearly tell that I care about this topic and this approach to dentistry and my life a lot more than the other version. Um, do you think that there are advantages to going to schools integrated with medical schools? Better match rates for residencies, general knowledge, or oral systemic link? I think there are some benefits. I don't know how many schools in general are fully integrated. I do know that, like, of the schools, I really only know of Harvard and Columbia. And I think both of those schools are pretty good for match rates into residencies because they have pretty big names, to be honest. Um, but I do also think that like having the integrated education is helpful in the sense that like you do learn a lot of systemic health. And I think for a long time, the connection between oral and systemic health has been ignored. And so having that background of, you know, having also just like the medical approach as well in terms of dentistry, I think is very helpful where um, you do learn a lot of like other things that aren't directly related to the oral cavity. But then as you learn more, like as you transition into the full dental curriculum, you see some of the diseases that you learned about in medical school coming back up, and then you can actually like see them and connect them. And I think that's really cool. Um, Also, I do like, I personally love learning. I kind of love being in school. And so I think a lot of the content that we learned was fascinating. And especially like for people that might be interested in oral surgery, I think medical school or like a medical integrated school is a great option because for people that are interested in oral surgery, you do need to take the CBSE exam, and that's basically like step one is the first board exam that medical students take, and CBSE is like the dental equivalent of that. And so having like that knowledge is really helpful when it comes time to studying for the CBSE exam if you're going to apply for oral surgery. Um, how did you answer why dentistry? Yeah, so that's a question that you're going to be asked like at every single interview. So you should have a good answer to that. How did I answer it? Um, well, I'll start off by saying I was very honest. I mean, not that like it was like that crazy of an answer. So for me, when I decided to choose dentistry, I think for me it was more of like a very practical decision that also tied into a lot of my personal experiences. So like for example, I had like a lot of dental issues growing up and same thing with a lot of my family members. Um, so when it came to like me answering why dentistry, I talked about how there's all of these like very practical aspects of dentistry that I enjoy, such as like interacting with people, having a lot of the hands-on care that you do with dentistry, longitudinal care, so you get to see the same patient over and over again, and you get to care for them throughout their lifetime. And then also just connecting it to like, oh, these are some of the experiences that I've had with dentistry, and this is why I want to continue this as a career. And also sort of related to how do you answer why dentistry, I think it's also important to like sometimes dental schools during applications or like interviews will ask you why you didn't choose medicine because they are pretty related careers. And so I feel like um, as you're preparing for interviews, that's a good question to be ready for too. Um, can you talk about the Harvard faculty experience for you and other people in your class? The faculty here are amazing. I think they're all really great people. So my class is also like part of it is because the dental class is 35 students, which is like really, really small compared to almost any other dental with I think every other dental school. I don't know what the next biggest school is, but I think it's like maybe 70 students. So I think it helps when you're a really small class because the faculty will recognize you, they'll say hi to you, they'll have conversations with you. And so um, I think having like a really small community is fantastic because people will recognize you and like if you have any questions, it's very easy to figure out who's going to be able to answer your question. And I think just more than that, everyone there is very friendly, and I think that's helped a lot with like being a student like far away from home and being in like grad school is a stressful experience. So I think the faculty are really great. Um, and you do get to interact with like almost like a lot of them during lectures and I enjoy the experience of having different lectures and getting to meet new people. When you were a TA, what did you write about in that experience? Because I got offered to become one. I think what I focused on when it came to being a TA, so a lot of like what I wrote in my application itself when it came to my experiences was trying to connect them with how that would make me a good dentist when it came time to me starting to practice. So for the TA stuff, I think a lot of the things that I emphasized was like my ability to communicate with people, my ability to explain things really well, because that's a big part of being a good dentist, where like you have all these really complicated treatment plans, or like all of what your patient is experiencing in like dental jargon, but then being able to explain it in a way that they'll understand. So that's like some of the stuff that I talked about. And then like time management and being organized, doing research on my own, because like as a dentist, you will have to like keep up with a lot of the new research and a lot of the new treatments coming out. And so I talked about like researching like if a student showed interest in like a specific topic, like trying to find ways to interest them more. So things like that. How much weight is put on the topic of hand dexterity, and where did you mention it in the application process? So let me think. So there is a place on like the actual like the application when you submit it, like there's a section that says like hand skills, I think. So I put it on that, and then sometimes I was asked about it on an interview, and then sometimes I was not. So I think it just depends. Some schools will ask you, and then some schools won't. I think the important thing is just to show that like that dentistry is a very hands-on career, and that like you are comfortable with that being your career. So like you don't have to be like, making like clay teeth or something, but just like, like be able to show that you are aware of like dexterity being important and that you can do, some things. And so you're not going to be like caught completely off guard when you're a dental student. So I mentioned it, I think, just in the application and then during the interviews when I was asked.
Hey, Nivi,
And
should we take maybe
yes,
one more question and then we can wrap up and announce our giveaway winner?
yes, sounds good. And the last question that was here is, in what year of undergrad did you take the DAT? I took the DAT in the summer between my junior and senior year of college. And I took a gap year while I applied. So I had maybe like a year, more than a year. I think, yeah, that counts as like a year because I um, completed my application during the summer after I graduated as a senior. Um, so I had like that whole summer to study for the DAT, and something else that I took into account was the undergrad courses that I had taken up until that point, because when it came time to studying, it was really helpful that I'd already taken a lot of the prerequisites, because while I didn't remember everything, it was really helpful, and like I learned a lot of the things. Like if I had already seen it before, and for example, like microbiology, then I was able to pick up that section much faster when I was studying for the exam. Okay. I think that's the last question.
So with that, our final giveaway winner for Dental Week is Annette Hidalgo. Congratulations. Our team will be in touch via email soon. Maybe if you'd like to go to the last slide too, we can kind of send everything off and drop your profile link one more time. Yeah,
Okay,
there we go.
perfect.
Thank you again for hosting today. We've really appreciated it and really appreciated having you as a part of our Dental School Week. Our DAT event is actually starting now. So hopefully see you all there. And thanks again, Nivi.
Okay, sounds good. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing and hop off the call.